Something big was happening in that studio. Jasmine Crockett and attorney Mark Elias were sitting across from each other, two calm faces. But the air between them felt electric. Mark Elias wasn't just any lawyer. He was the man who had defended voting rights in hundreds of cases, a legend in the courtroom, and he looked serious, almost worried. He leaned forward and asked, "Congresswoman Crockett, Governor Ron DeSantis just signed another order, ending DEI programs in Florida's public universities. He says it's about fairness, but you've said this isn't just about Florida. What do you mean?" Crockett didn't hesitate. She leaned in too. Her eyes locked on Elias, and the calm room suddenly felt charged with fire. "Mark," she said, her voice sharp and clear, "this isn't just about Florida. This is about America. What DeSantis is doing isn't new. It's not original. And it's not really about education." She paused, just long enough for every listener to lean closer. "What he's doing," she said slowly, "is using the Trump playbook. But he's doing it smarter. Same goal, different face. Keep Americans divided. Keep them confused. Keep them fighting each other, so they don't notice what's being taken away." Elias nodded. He'd seen something like this before. "But never this direct," Crockett continued. Her voice was calm but rising. "He says he's ending DEI because it discriminates against white people. He says he's banning books to protect kids. He says he's restricting voting to stop fraud. But every single one of those reasons is a lie." She lifted her hand, counting them one by one. Every one of those claims sounds reasonable. But they hide something darker. Elias could see it now. She wasn't just giving opinions. She had facts, receipts. Crockett picked up her tablet. "Let me show you something." She turned the screen toward the camera. Before the DEI bans, the University of Florida had about 12% black students in a state that's 17% black. Faculty? Only 6% black. Then she swiped to another chart. After the bans, black enrollment dropped even more. Down 3% in the first year. Black faculty hiring, almost zero. She looked right into the camera. And guess what went up? Not white students. Not local kids. Out-of-state wealthy students who can pay full tuition. The room went quiet. "So no," she said. "He's not fighting discrimination. He's reinforcing it. He's making higher education whiter and richer." Elias leaned in. "You're saying this is intentional?" Crockett didn't blink. "Mark, of course it's intentional. Ron DeSantis isn't dumb. He went to Yale. Harvard Law. He knows exactly what happens when you eliminate DEI. You shut the door on opportunity for black and brown students and open it wider for the wealthy." She tapped her tablet again. "This isn't an accident. This is a pattern." "It's part of a plan," Elias asked. "A plan for what?" Crockett took a deep breath. "To keep power," she said. "To keep control." She explained slowly, like a teacher breaking down a lesson. "When you take away educational access, you take away economic mobility. And when you take away mobility, you take away political power." Then she said something that made the audience hold their breath. "This isn't about merit. It's about maintaining control of who gets to succeed in America." Elias nodded grimly. He knew where this was heading, but Crockett was just getting started. These bans, these book removals, these voting restrictions, they're all connected. They're not random. They're not just culture wars. They're chess moves. She zoomed in on a map of Florida. "Let's talk about this," she said. "District 5, North Florida, used to be a majority black district. Represented by Al Lawson, a black congressman." She pointed at the screen. DeSantis redrew it. Split that one strong black district into 4 smaller ones. Now every single one is majority white and Republican. Elias frowned. "Can he even do that legally?" Crockett smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "That's the thing. The Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act so much that what used to be illegal now slides by." She looked at him, her eyes full of frustration, as long as he doesn't say the quiet part out loud, as long as he doesn't say he's doing it because of race. The courts let it slide. She turned back to the camera, and That's what makes it dangerous. Because now it's legal to destroy representation, as long as you wrap it in the language of fairness. The weight of those words filled the studio. Elias sat back, taking it in. So you're saying what's happening in Florida could happen anywhere? Exactly, Crockett said firmly. And it already is. She pulled up another slide. Look at Texas, same playbook. Georgia, same playbook. North Carolina, same playbook. They all copy each other. DEI bans, book bans, voter suppression, redistricting. It's all the same pattern. Her tone grew urgent. This is not just about Florida. This is a national strategy, a coordinated plan to roll back decades of progress. Then she leaned closer, her eyes locking with the camera. Americans need to wake up, because what's happening in one state today can happen in your state tomorrow. Elias nodded slowly. So what's the goal? She answered instantly. The goal is simple. Reduce Black power, political, economic, cultural, and convince everyone else it's about fairness. Then Elias changed the subject slightly. You mentioned book bans earlier. How does that fit in? Crockett sighed. It's all connected, Mark. Book bans aren't about kids. They're about control. She pulled up another list. Here's what's banned in Florida. Toni Morrison's beloved A Children's Book about Ruby Bridges, The 1619 Project. Her voice grew stronger. They call these books divisive. You know why? Because they make people uncomfortable by telling the truth. She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. If you can erase the truth about history, you can erase the truth about injustice. You can convince people that racism ended years ago, and that programs like DEI are unfair. Elias's expression darkened. So you're saying they're rewriting history? Yes, she said firmly. That's exactly what they're doing. And it's working, she continued, her voice low but intense. Because if you can control what kids learn about the past, you can shape what they believe about the present. You can convince them that inequality is normal, that opportunity is equal, that anyone still struggling must be lazy or undeserving. Elias nodded slowly. And when you do that, she added, you can keep people divided forever. She sat back for a moment, letting it sink in. Then she said something that hit like a punch. This isn't education. This is indoctrination. But they call it freedom. The room fell silent again. Elias looked down at his notes, then back up. You're describing something massive, coordinated. But if it's that big, why aren't more people seeing it? Crockett smiled sadly. Because confusion is the strategy, Mark. While they're attacking DEI, they're fighting Disney. While they're suppressing votes, they're talking about bathrooms and drag shows. While they're redrawing maps, they're shouting about wokeness. She shook her head. It's all noise, designed to keep people distracted. They make Americans angry at each other so they never see who's really pulling the strings. Elias sighed. So this is what you've been tracking all along. The pattern beneath the chaos. Crockett nodded. Exactly. It's not random. It's deliberate. It's the Trump playbook rewritten in legal language. Elias frowned slightly. Explain that? Trump ruled through chaos, Crockett said. He used outrage. DeSantis uses order. Trump tweeted lies. DeSantis passes laws. But it's the same strategy, just more polished. She tapped the tablet again, showing a timeline. When Trump attacked DEI at the federal level, DeSantis did it in Florida. When Trump spread lies about election fraud, DeSantis created a so-called election crimes unit that only targets Black communities. When Trump banned critical race theory, DeSantis made it law. Elias nodded slowly. So you're saying DeSantis learned from Trump's mistakes? Crockett's answer was chilling. He did, and that's why he's more dangerous. She looked directly at the camera again. Trump was loud. DeSantis is quiet. Trump was chaotic. DeSantis is calculated. Trump broke norms. DeSantis rewrites them. The room went quiet. Even the lights felt still. Mark, she said softly, this isn't about Florida anymore. It's about whether America will notice what's happening before it's too late. Elias leaned forward one last time. So what happens if people don't notice? Crockett took a deep breath. Then democracy doesn't die in darkness, she said. It dies in broad daylight. While people argue over culture wars and never see what's being stolen behind the curtain. She paused, looking straight at the lens. Because this isn't just politics. It's a strategy to divide, distract, and dismantle democracy itself. She leaned in just a little. Closer, and we've only just begun to uncover it. Crockett leaned in closer to the camera. And we've only just begun to uncover it. The studio lights flickered. Slightly, Mark Elias straightened up. Sensing the shift, he could tell she was about to show something powerful. All right, he said softly. You said you've been tracking this for months. What proof do you have that it's a national strategy and not just one governor's choices? Crockett tapped her tablet again. Her expression changed, calm, serious, focused. Mark, she said, I'm about to show you something that most people haven't seen yet. She swiped, revealing a page filled with logos and bullet points. This, she said, is a strategy memo. It came from a major Republican consulting firm. It was leaked earlier this year, and it spells out the whole plan. Elias leaned forward. A memo from inside the party? Yes, she said, and it's shocking. She zoomed in on the first paragraph. It literally says, and I'm quoting here, cultural polarization is the most reliable path to maintain voter loyalty in key states. Elias blinked. So, they're admitting it? Crockett nodded. They are. This document openly talks about using DEI bans, book restrictions, and voting changes to reshape the electorate before 2026. They're not even hiding it anymore. She read another line. Promote merit-based reforms to appeal to moderate voters while limiting minority voter influence through redistricting and election integrity legislation. She looked straight at Elias. That's coded language. Mark. But the meaning is clear. Elias frowned. They're saying the quiet part out loud. Crockett's voice grew intense. Yes. And they call it the restoration agenda. Elias repeated the phrase slowly. The restoration agenda? Yes, Crockett said. Restoration of what? That's the question. Because they're not restoring fairness. They're restoring control. She swiped again, showing a map of the United States. Colored dots appeared across multiple states. Each dot, she explained, represents a state where parts of this plan are already in motion. Florida, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. Each one glowed red on the screen. Elias studied it carefully. So this isn't theory anymore. No, Crockett said firmly. It's real. In Texas, they've introduced bills almost identical to Florida's DEI bans. In Georgia, they're reviewing school libraries for so-called woke content. In North Carolina, they're redrawing maps under the same legal loopholes Florida used. This is copy and paste politics, a national playbook. She paused for a moment. And what's worse? It's working. Elias shook his head. How do you mean? Look at the numbers, she said, pulling up another chart. After these policies pass, voter turnout in Black communities drops. College enrollment among minority students drops, but donations to the politicians behind these bills skyrocket. She showed a slide of campaign finance, numbers, corporate donors, billionaire families, political action committees, all pouring money into the same lawmakers pushing these laws. It's not about protecting fairness. It's about protecting power. The camera zoomed slightly toward her face. Follow the money, she said quietly. It always leads to the truth. Elias nodded slowly. So this is a coordinated effort funded by people who benefit from division. Exactly, Crockett said. And the division is the point. They want chaos. They want anger. Because when people are fighting over drag shows or pronouns, they don't see who's rewriting the laws that control their lives. Elias leaned back, exhaling. This is chilling, Crockett nodded. Mark, they're not trying to win fair elections. They're trying to build an environment where they can't lose, no matter what voters want. She tapped the tablet again, showing another headline. This is Florida's new election integrity unit. DeSantis says it's to stop fraud, but look where they operate. Overwhelmingly. Black neighborhoods. She swiped through several cases. Out of the first 20 people arrested, 19 were black, and most of them didn't even realize they were accused of doing anything wrong. They were told they could vote. Then they were arrested for voting. Elias looked stunned. That sounds like intimidation. That's exactly what it is, Crockett replied. It sends a message. Don't even try. It's psychological suppression. You don't need to ban people from voting if you can make them too. Scared to show up, she looked directly at the camera, and it's spreading. Other states are creating their own versions. They call it protecting elections. But what they're really protecting is control. Elias rubbed his forehead. This is beyond politics. It's structural. Yes, Crockett said. It's the system being rewritten quietly while everyone argues loudly. She paused again. Her tone softened. Mark, here's what people need to understand. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly lives in a dictatorship. It happens step by step. Law by law, district by district, until one day, your voice doesn't count anymore. And you don't even realize when it stopped. Elias nodded slowly, his eyes heavy with concern. You said something earlier, Jasmine, about history repeating itself. She nodded. Exactly. This isn't the first time America has seen this play. After the Civil War, there were programs to help freed slaves, education, voting, land. Then came Reconstruction backlash. White lawmakers rewrote laws, restricted access, and created barriers. It took almost 100 years to undo some of that damage. She looked down for a moment, then back at the camera. And now, here we are again, with new language, new tools, and new excuses. Elias sighed. So we're watching modern Reconstruction rollback. Yes, she said softly. But this time it's wrapped in the language of freedom. She held up her tablet again. This memo even uses words like choice, integrity, and fairness. It's marketing. They've turned democracy suppression into a brand. Elias leaned forward again. You said this was preparing for 2026. How? Crockett nodded. Let me show you. She pulled up another section of the memo, highlighting key lines. It says, our objective is to secure long-term structural advantage through educational, cultural, and electoral reforms by Q4 2026. That means they're timing everything. Book bans, redistricting, DEI eliminations, to reshape who votes and what they believe before the next major midterm. She looked at Elias. They're engineering the future voter base. Elias rubbed his chin. So by controlling education and access, they control turnout and opinion. Yes, Crockett said. And once that's done, it's nearly impossible to reverse. She leaned back. Slightly. This is why I've been warning that it's not just a Florida story, it's a blueprint being exported. Elias glanced at the notes on his desk. What about the media? Surely someone's covering this. Crockett smiled sadly. Some are. But most of the mainstream coverage focuses on the surface. The drama, the shouting, the headlines. They talk about the Disney fight or the book bans as isolated stories. They don't connect the dots. That's why we're here. To connect them. She gestured toward the camera. Because the dots form a picture, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Elias sat silently for a few seconds, then asked, So, what do we do? What can regular people actually do about this? Crockett took a deep breath. That's the question everyone asks. Mark. And the first step is simple. Pay attention. You can't fight what you don't see. She ticked off with her fingers. Step 1. Learn what your own state is doing. Are they introducing bills about DEI? Or curriculum reform? Or election integrity? Those are red flags. Step 2. Support groups that challenge these laws in court. Step 3. Talk about it, even when people call you dramatic, because silence is exactly what they're counting on. Elias nodded. So awareness is power. Exactly, she said. Information is resistance. She looked down for a second, gathering her thoughts. Then she added quietly, but awareness alone isn't enough. Elias raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? I mean they're moving faster than most people realize. She swiped to another slide. This shows bills introduced across the country in the last 12 months related to DEI. Curriculum bans and voting restrictions. The screen filled with data. Over 200 bills, she said. 200 in 1 year. Elias's jaw tightened. That's an entire wave of legislation. Yes, Crockett said. A wave, and if no one pushes back, it becomes a flood, she pointed to the screen again, and here's something else. These bills all use the same words. The same sentences, almost like they were written by the same people. Elias tilted his head. Model legislation? Exactly, Crockett said. One consulting firm writes it, SALT. Lawmakers copy and paste it into their state. Proposals. That's how you build a national movement quietly, through identical state laws that look local, but are actually coordinated. Elias whistled softly. That's brilliant and terrifying, Crockett nodded. It's efficient, and it's dangerous. She sat back in her chair. This is how democracy gets dismantled legally, not by force, but by paperwork. Elias looked straight into the camera now, and people wonder why voter apathy is a threat. Crockett nodded again. Exactly. If people stop caring, the people in power can do whatever they want. The silence stretched for a few seconds. Then Elias asked quietly, You've shown us the problem. What happens next? Crockett leaned forward again. What happens next depends on us, because this plan only works if people stay asleep. Her tone changed, quieter, but more emotional. I travel across the country, Mark. I talk to students, parents, community leaders. And you know what I hear most often? I didn't know. People don't know what's happening because it's not loud. It's slow, quiet, and disguised as normal policy. She looked at the camera again. That's why I keep saying, wake up. Don't wait until your school, your district, your vote disappears, because by then it's too late. Elias nodded. You're turning awareness into a warning. Yes, she said. And the warning is this. Democracy doesn't end with a bang. It ends with paperwork and apathy. She took a breath, the studio silent except for her voice. Florida is the test case. If it works there, they'll take it everywhere. Elias looked unsettled. You mean the whole country? Yes, she said simply. The whole country. She tapped her tablet one last time. A slide appeared with the words, Phase 2, Expansion. Elias read it aloud. Expansion? Yes, Crockett said. The memo says, following validation in Florida, replicate policies in all red and purple states by Q1 2026. That's their goal, to turn Florida's model into America's norm. Elias leaned back, eyes wide. This is bigger than anyone thought. It is, Crockett said. And it's happening right now. She leaned closer to the camera again, voice almost a whisper. They're not coming for democracy someday in the future. They're already here, reshaping it piece by piece. The music under her words would swell here, low, tense, emotional. She held her gaze steady. And if you think this can't reach your state, you haven't been paying attention. Elias sat back, speechless. He finally managed to say, So part 1 showed us the pattern. Part 2 shows us the proof. Crockett nodded slowly. And in part 3, she said, we're going to talk about what comes next, how to stop it before it's too late. She paused, eyes still fixed on the camera, because what I'm about to show you next will change how you see this country forever. Crockett's last words hung in the air. Stay with us, because the clock is ticking. The studio lights dimmed a little. The tension was real now. You could almost feel it through the screen. Mark Elias took a slow breath and asked, Jasmine, you've shown us the pattern and the proof. But what comes next? How do they plan to finish this before 2026? Crockett didn't blink. She looked straight ahead, calm but fierce. "Mark," she said, "Phase 3 is already starting. And most Americans have no idea." Elias leaned closer. "Phase 3? "Yes," she said. "It's called cultural alignment. It sounds harmless, but it's the most dangerous step yet." She swiped to another document on her tablet. The words, "Strategic Communications and Media Partnerships" appeared at the top. "This is where they shape what people think is true," she explained. "They've learned that you don't need to ban all information. You just flood people with confusing information until they give up trying to tell what's real." Elias frowned. "Disinformation?" Crockett nodded. "Exactly. Coordinated media manipulation. They use online influencers, political talk shows, social media algorithms, all feeding the same stories. They tell you DEI is discrimination. They tell you book bans protect kids. They tell you voting restrictions protect elections, and if you hear it often enough, you start to believe it," she sighed quietly. "They call it narrative engineering." Elias read from the screen. "Partner with sympathetic media outlets to promote shared messaging on fairness, integrity, and traditional values." He looked up, eyes wide. "They wrote that down?" "They did," she said. "And they follow it word for word." Crockett scrolled again, showing charts of social media engagement. "Look at this. Every time they push one of these talking points, online traffic spikes. More comments, more shares. It spreads faster than the truth." She looked into the camera. "That's why facts alone aren't enough anymore. They're not fighting for truth. They're fighting for attention. Whoever controls attention controls reality." Elias leaned back. "So they're not just changing laws, they're changing minds." "Exactly," she said. "And it's working, because they make people feel like they're choosing the truth themselves." She paused for a moment. "It's the same tactic that's been used for generations. Propaganda wrapped in patriotism." Elias asked quietly, "Who's behind this?" Crockett swiped again. "There are organizations, political action committees, think tanks, media networks, all working together. Some of them have names that sound positive, like the Freedom Institute or Citizens for Fair Education. But behind the curtain, it's the same money and the same message." She zoomed in on a chart showing the connections. "These groups feed talking points to TV hosts, podcasts, and even school boards. Then those local voices repeat it until it sounds like public opinion." Elias shook his head. "That's chilling." Crockett nodded. "It's smart. They know most people trust the voices closest to them, so they don't need to own every news outlet. They just need to influence the right ones." She looked down for a second. "And here's the worst part. They've started teaching people not to trust anyone who disagrees. Not teachers, not journalists, not scientists. Just their side," Elias whispered. "Divide and conquer." "Exactly," she said. "And once people stop trusting each other, democracy stops working." She leaned forward, her tone steady but urgent. "This is why it's so important to reconnect people to truth. Because the truth is the one thing their whole plan can't survive." Elias nodded slowly. "So, if they're building walls of division, what's the counter-strategy?" Crockett smiled slightly, though it was a tired smile. "Connection, education, awareness, and courage." She raised her hand, counting each one. "First, connection. Talk to people who think differently. Don't yell, just ask questions. Divide and conquer only works if we stay divided." Second, education. Real education, not the sanitized version. Teach kids real history, even when it's uncomfortable. Because when you know the past, you can recognize the pattern. Third, awareness. Pay attention to who benefits from the fights on your screen. When you see outrage trending, ask yourself, who gains from my anger? And fourth, courage. It takes courage to speak up when everyone else stays quiet. But silence has never protected freedom. Elias listened carefully. "That sounds like a movement." "It has to be," Crockett said. "Because this plan isn't stopping on its own." She showed another chart. "Look, upcoming bills in 2025, new education transparency laws, more voter ID requirements, More parental rights bills aimed at controlling what schools teach. It's the same script, new titles. Elias sighed. They never stop. No, Crockett said. But neither can we. She glanced toward the camera again, her tone soft but intense. Here's the truth, Mark. People always ask, what can one person do? But history shows it's always one person who starts the wave. One person refuses to stay silent. One person asks the hard question, and others follow. Elias nodded thoughtfully. Like Rosa Parks, like John Lewis. Exactly, she said. They didn't wait for permission to act. They acted because it was right. That's what we need now. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as she leaned forward. Because this fight isn't about politics anymore. It's about power. Who gets it, who keeps it, and who gets silenced. Elias folded his hands. And what happens if people don't fight back? Crockett's answer came quietly, almost like a whisper. Then the idea of America, the real idea, fades. Not with an explosion, not with soldiers in the streets, but with laws that sound reasonable and headlines that sound harmless. She looked straight into the lens. That's how freedom ends. Not when it's taken, but when we stop noticing it slipping away. Elias was silent. The studio felt heavy now, like everyone could feel the weight of what she said. After a moment, he asked, "What gives you hope, Jasmine? After seeing all this, why do you still believe we can turn it around?" Crockett smiled, a real smile this time. "Because I've seen people wake up. I've seen students organize their own protests. I've seen parents show up at school board meetings demanding real books back on the shelves. I've seen lawyers file lawsuits and win. I've seen voters stand in line for hours because they refuse to be silenced." She nodded slowly. "That's what keeps me going. Power works both ways, and when people remember that, everything changes." Elias smiled back. "So you still believe in the people?" "I do," she said. "Because history shows that when Americans finally see the truth, they don't back down." She turned back to the camera again, addressing the audience directly now. "If you're watching this, you have a choice. You can scroll past, tell yourself it's too political, too complicated, or you can decide that your voice matters because it does." Her tone grew softer. "Maybe you can't change every law, but you can share this story. You can talk about it. You can vote. You can volunteer. You can teach your kids the truth." She pointed gently toward the lens. "That's how democracy survives. One conversation, one action, one vote at a time." Elias nodded. "That's powerful," Crockett continued, her words clear and slow. "People think democracy is something we have. It's not. It's something we do, every day. And when we stop doing it, we lose it." She leaned back, letting that line breathe. Ron DeSantis and politicians like him are betting that we'll get tired, that we'll argue with each other instead of standing together, that we'll give up before we notice what's being built behind closed doors. Her voice sharpened. "Don't prove them right." Elias raised his hand slightly. "So what should people do right now?" "Today?" Crockett didn't hesitate. "Register to vote. Check your registration. Help someone else do the same. Read real news. Follow groups like Democracy Docket, the Brennan Center, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. They're fighting in courts every day." She added, "And most importantly, don't let cynicism win. That's their secret weapon. When you believe nothing can change, you stop trying. And when you stop trying, they've already won." Elias nodded. "That's the final battle. Not between parties, but between hope and apathy." "Yes," Crockett said. "Hope is resistance. Belief is power." She glanced at the tablet again. The last slide appeared behind them, a quote from Fannie Lou Hamer. "Nobody's free until everybody's free." Crockett smiled softly. "That's the truth they can't erase. That's the truth they fear most." Elias looked at her with quiet respect. "Congresswoman Crockett, thank you for laying this out. It's sobering, but also motivating." Crockett nodded. "It has to be, because if people understand the danger, they'll rise to meet it." She looked back to the audience one last time. "I'll leave you with this," she said, her voice steady and low. "Freedom isn't guaranteed. It's guarded by people who care enough to defend it. And every generation gets tested. This is our test." She leaned forward slightly. "So don't wait for someone else to fix it. Be part of the fix. Talk, share, vote, protect the truth." The music under her voice began to rise. Slow, inspiring, serious. Because when you stop paying attention, they win. But when you wake up, when you stand up, even one person, they lose their power. She held the gaze for a long moment. "Florida was the beginning," she said quietly. "But America decides how the story ends." The camera started to pull back slowly. Elias sat silently beside her, his expression thoughtful. Then, as the outro music swelled, Crockett spoke one final time. "History is watching," she said. "And one day, our children will ask what we did when democracy was on the line. Make sure your answer is, 'We fought for it.'" The screen faded to black. Words appeared. "Stay alert. Stay united. Stay free." Then the narrator's voice returned softly. "If this opened your eyes, hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe." Every comment, every share, every voice pushes truth higher in the algorithm, because silence helps the lie, but your voice helps the truth rise. The music swelled once more, hopeful, determined, powerful, and as the screen went dark, the final sentence echoed, "The clock is still ticking, but it's not too late to turn it back." This isn't just another story. This is a warning, and it's a call. To every person who still believes in truth, fairness, and freedom. What happens next depends on us. Every view, every comment, every share spreads awareness, and awareness is the first step toward change. If this video opened your eyes, don't just scroll past. Take 1 second right now. Tap like to fight the algorithm that buries stories like this. Drop a comment to share your thoughts and keep the discussion alive. And subscribe, and because we're not stopping here. Every week, we're uncovering more truth, connecting the dots they don't want you to see. Together, we're building a community that refuses to stay silent, a community that asks questions, a community that believes democracy isn't a headline. It's something we fight for every single day, so stay informed, stay aware, and most of all, stay loud, because silence helps the lie. But your voice helps the truth rise. Like, comment, share, subscribe. The fight for truth starts with you.